What happens when law, business, and life collide? Each week on Lead Counsel, your host Tom Tona will take a deep dive into topics related to the law, the business of law, and life. There will be insightful discussions with industry insiders, experts, and thought leaders making significant contributions and meaningful differences in their fields of expertise. Tom is the founder and managing attorney at TonaLaw. He has been a practicing attorney since 1994 and the leader of TonaLaw since it opened in 2001. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with free information on law and the business of law, and to give you actionable tools related to each of these areas. Now, here's Tom.
All right. Welcome to the Lead Counsel podcast. My name is Tom Tona, personal injury attorney out of Long Island with TonaLaw, here with my co-host, Juliet. Jules, what's going on?
Hi, everybody.
Speak up, Jules.
Hello. Hello, James. Glad to have you on.
All right. You just spoiled it for everybody, but we have a special guest today who's near and dear to my heart. James Joseph has been a friend of mine for almost 30 years, man. 30 years, James. How are you?
I'm doing great, Tom. You know, as you're talking, I'm doing the math in my head, and I think it's more than that.
It might be. It might be. I mean, we've known each other since I was in undergrad.
Yes,
so,
yes, exactly. Right. But
that's crazy.
I'd love to tell the audience we've known each other since we were 2, if it's been almost 35 years.
I would like that too, man. But the gray hair on my face belies that fact.
Yes.
So just a brief intro about James. James is the managing partner of Joseph Law Group, premier in the field of matrimonial practice, premier law firm. I think, James, I've referred over, I think I probably refer over 2 people a month to you at least right now, right? It's like 24 or 25 a year that I'm sending your way.
You've been amazing, Tom, and I'm so truly grateful for that.
Oh, listen, I'm grateful. I mean, so just a little bit more about you before we jump into the meat and potatoes of the podcast. Your firm specializes in matrimonial and family law exclusively. One of the reasons I wanted to get you on, and I'm just going to kind of jump right in and make it part of the intro, was that you've always fascinated me with your non-marketing approach to marketing. From the outside, and I study business models of law firms, what's made you so amazing at it is you dominated your space, and your only marketing I can see from the outside is that you just are excellent at what you do, right? You've done it so differently for so long. So not only are you proactive, but your emotionally intelligent approach to the practice of law has just been amazing. So kudos to you. You've really done some amazing stuff. And I know you're very involved with the Bar Association, all of that, but I really want to focus on you and your law firm today. So give me a little bit of background on you. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't address today's special date, right? So talk about why today is special.
Thank you, Tom. So 16 years ago today, I was sitting in a hospital in Boston undergoing a stem cell transplant, having been diagnosed with leukemia when I was 34, when my wife was 7 months pregnant with our second child. So it was quite a long road, and I'm really, really happy to be on the other side of it, of course. I try to live in gratitude, if not every moment of every day, as much as I can. I remind myself how fortunate I am to be here. If you're from Long Island and you see a car on the road, hopefully I'm not driving aggressively. I think I've grown out of that. But you'll see my license plate is SCT 7507. So that's when I had my stem cell transplant, July 5th, 2007. I feel so fortunate. I mean, it was a very high-risk procedure, and there was a real possibility I wouldn't make it. And there was a real possibility that I would come out with lifelong debilitating side effects. And I dodged all those bullets. So as you know, I'm in great health. I exercise quite a bit, and I've never looked back. So thank you, Tom. It is a special day for me and my family.
Yeah, and you're blessed, and we're all blessed, right? Because having you in my life specifically, and then the clients that I refer over to you, I think you see people at the lowest point. Right? Like a therapist once told me that divorce is probably the most trying time in someone's life other than death. Dealing with somebody close to you as a death, right? I got to ask this question because it's been plaguing me for 30 years. What made you pick matrimonial and family law, man? It's one field that I say to everybody, I'm like, I'll litigate anything except for divorces. I'm not doing divorces. What made you pick matrimonial and family law?
Yeah, Tom, so I'll admit it was not my goal. I had worked for a firm where about half my work was matrimonial work and the other half was corporate litigation. And when I started my own practice 25 years ago, my thought was to get away from the matrimonial law. It's very taxing. It's very draining. When I was young, I worked in a deli, and I used to say, working in the deli, it was the perfect relationship for me and the public. I had lots of friends that would come in every morning, and I would say, "Hey, Joe, great to see you. Black, no sugar, 2 scrambled eggs. You have a great day." They'd wish me a great day. We were all happy. I got into divorce work, and of course, you go very deep. But I think what happened with me when I started my own practice, I was very good at it, and I think I had the right personality for it. As you and I both know, there's a lot of divorce lawyers that take a very different approach than my firm does. They come in with a very aggressive attitude. I get it. When I was young, both of us have a bit of a fight in us. And certainly I wanted to be the hero and save the day and, would fight like hell for my clients. But the longer I did this, the more I realized that while there are times you need to fight in my area of practice, it always needs to be done with the understanding that these people, particularly if they have children, are going to have lives post-divorce. And the more damage we do during the divorce, the more we're going to hurt them and their children going forward. So I learned that that wasn't the right approach. We don't yell and scream. I never did. No one in my firm does. It's not who we are. There's nothing that rattles us. My mom was an ER nurse in a New York City hospital back in the 60s. And I grew up in a very calm atmosphere where I was taught that there is just nothing is worth losing your cool over, and that you can function a lot better when you're calm. You can make better decisions, you can strategize, you can handle things in a much more productive manner. So I think that personality just, it's who I am. It's the people I've hired, and it led to, a really nice practice, attracted a lot of the right people that we can help, that want to be helped.
Absolutely. And so I describe you to a lot of the people that I refer over, right? I'm like, one, don't look for cheap. He's not cheap. But this is an investment in your future, right? It's like everything else that we should spend money on is hiring the right attorney, right? And you touched on something that I think is really interesting, which is the thing that makes you so different, right? Is that emotional intelligence. So many matrimonial attorneys I've had kind of interactions with, and I felt like I needed a shower after, because that they're churning files. That they're inciting their clients to fight versus diffusing. And I've seen you firsthand, right? I've walked some of my friends into James's office and sat with him, right? And gone to court with him for some of my very close friends. And to watch you do it, and I think the one case I went in, it was you and Elsa. Elsa was practicing with you at the time. Elsa's your wife. And everything that he's saying right now, Jules, is 100% on, where he's just very calm, very unflappable, knows the law he's going in, knows the points they're going to argue if arguments required, but with such finesse that everybody just leaves in a better place, right? I tell clients, James, that you will come through this a better person if you just listen to James. Often your first piece of advice is what? For a client that comes in, it's an emotionally charged situation. They got 2 kids. And again, I plan on using this podcast, by the way, to just send it to people and say, listen, this is James who I'm referring you to. Listen to the podcast. It'll put your mind at ease. So help put people's mind at ease.
So Tom, as you know, we push all of our clients into therapy. I tell everybody, you may be the best baseball pitcher in the world. You still have a coach. And gosh, you and I know, and you've done a number of great podcasts already on the value, the importance of coaching, of having a coach. I know Jules, I was so excited to hear that Tom, has sent you down that path as well.
Yes, of course.
That is just so wonderful. And I think a real sign of who Tom is, that he's giving you those opportunities. So I believe strongly that a divorce, we don't learn how to handle a divorce in school. It's completely unmooring emotionally for most people. And my clients that are in therapy are much better equipped to handle the divorce. I always say the attorneys in my office are really nice, caring people who can give you some really good advice on the emotional side of it. But that's not our training. That's not our expertise. And we charge a lot more an hour than the therapist does.
I was just going to say that it's a lot cheaper to go to therapy than talk to your attorney.
100%. And so as much as, we'll take the client's calls, but we really encourage them, get a therapist. We're going to handle things much better. quite frankly, I believe that it allows us to not only get better results for them, but to be more cost effective. We're really attuned to the cost of divorce. And it's interesting, our hourly rates are not cheap. I do believe that we're really cost effective. I can't prove this to myself, much less to my clients, but I've seen these lawyers that come in, some at lower hourly rates, some at higher rates. And you use the word churning. There's certainly a number of lawyers in my firm who believe that there's a lot of churning that goes on. I like to wear a little bit of rose-colored glasses. And I think that many of these lawyers are just misdirected. They believe that their job is just to fight, to yell, and to scream, and they don't realize how counterproductive that often is. And what we've seen is that cases that we know we could resolve for a lot less money end up costing more because attorneys take the wrong approach. And that's beyond unfortunate. It's really tragic. These are people's lives. The quicker we get this done, as long as we're protecting them, as long as we're making sure that we're getting them a really good outcome under the circumstances, the better off they are. To go through a 3-year divorce when it could have been resolved in a year is really disturbing to me. It's one of the reasons why, and as you know, these days, I don't handle day-to-day anymore. I've stepped back completely from handling cases. And the reason I've done that is we've become very mission-focused. And honestly, you're a large part of this. You've been whispering in my ear and yelling in my ear. Why aren't I bigger? Why aren't we serving more people on Long Island? We have something really special. And coming from you, that means so much to me. And it's had such an impact on me. So we're onboarding our 6th lawyer next week.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so excited and really looking forward to this next chapter with the firm as we expand in a really appropriate way, making sure that anyone that we onboard, regardless of position, whether they're a paralegal, a lawyer, an administrative assistant, front desk, that everybody shares our core values, that we're all on the same page. We're putting our clients first and making sure that, that we all understand what that means.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, you and I talk about it over lunch all the time. And listen, anybody that knows me or even listens to the podcast doesn't know me that well, although now I'm talking to more and more people who do listen to it. They want to get on the phone or whatever. But I am not the kind of guy that just lavishes people with titles or with praise undeservedly, right? Having had firsthand experience with James and referred you out to, I can't even tell you the number of clients over the last 20-something years, you are special. And what you're doing is special because in a field where it's so easy to say, our average fee per file is going to be $25,000 or $50,000, all we have to do is make it worse for a couple of years. You take the high road, man. And that's what makes you really special because I can refer people to you that are close to me, like brother or sister or whatever, and say, he's not going to hurt you. He's straight up in his billing. He's straight up in his approach to billing, where I know that you're in the minority in that regard. But I also think that that's why you're on your 6th hire of attorneys, right? Mm-hmm. You're expanding your firm in a very controlled way. And what that allows you to do, because I've done the same thing, right? Step back from the file work. Is it allows you to build the culture that replicates who you are and what you wanted to build, right? I think your greatest marketing is the fact that you're not really selling. You're not really selling. You're showing people how you can do it differently, and you are doing it differently. And it's just amazing. So I do hope that any potential clients that listen to this, and there will be a lot, because I'm going to use this instead of spending my hour on the phone explaining who you are, say, listen, I sat down and spoke with James. Trust me when I tell you he's the guy. I can't explain to you why. You just got to trust me on it. But I go into the why of he doesn't churn. He's straight as far as emotionally intelligent. And every one of the lawyers in your firm doing the same thing. Who the hell leaves 5-star reviews for lawyers that practice in your space, in the divorce space?
And Tom, that's knock on wood. That's all we have. And we ask our clients after the divorce is over if they're willing to leave us a review. And they've been great. And we've been doing it fairly steadily for the last couple of years. And the reviews have been so rewarding to us because we know who we are and we know the benefit that we're bringing to the clients' lives. But you don't always know, look, you're leaving with often half your assets. You're seeing your children less. It's not the kind of thing that most people are overjoyed when it's over. There's a lot of mixed emotions that come at the end of a divorce for many people. And so to read those reviews for myself and my team has been so rewarding. It just feels really good to know that who we are and what we're about The clients get it, they see it, and they're benefiting from it, which I guess maybe that's the biggest part of it, that we're having the impact on their lives that we hoped we were. So that's just been incredible.
Yeah, it's social proof, right? Like when you see those 5-star reviews rolling in and they're not spammy, they're real clients, they're your employees, whatever it is, it's social proof, right? For you as the leader of the firm. So when I talk to somebody in 5 minutes, especially if it's a lawyer in your space, let's use matrimonial for a second. I know if they're in it for the money. I know if they're in it for the war, or I know if it's a calling. And for you, my man, you have definitely made it your calling. And I think it's more than just doing matrimonial. Your calling is to do it differently, right? Like, what's your vision for Joseph Law?
So we're heading towards 15 lawyers. That's our goal. It's going to take time to get the right lawyers. We're finally in a place. We always wanted to hire young lawyers, new lawyers, with the thought that we could bring them up the way that we wanted to do it. But to be able to do that, you really need a strong base because they require a lot of training. And I'm not going to bill a client the hourly rate that I bill a senior attorney for a new lawyer who really doesn't know what they're doing. Can they add value? Sure, but not at a high price, in my opinion. And that's true for all of my clients. As you know, I represent people, from all walks of life. I was a volunteer fireman when I was younger. I represent a lot of firemen and policemen, a lot of civil servants, a lot of what we call W-2 wage earners. And then we represent really ultra wealthy people who have more money and really more houses than I could imagine. And we really feel strongly that everyone gets treated the same way. Everybody, we're here to help. We're here to help them move on to the next chapter of their lives. Look, my wife, you've known her almost as long as you've known me, since we all went to law school together.
Yep.
And I would always say to people, I look forward to going home. And it's really sad for me to think that many people don't. And that, not only do they often not enjoy their jobs, but then they don't want to go home. And that's a really crappy life. And while I'm a big believer in marriage and certainly, have not found people that jump to divorce too quickly, that's not something I see too often. Although when they're on the fence, we'll push them hard into marriage counseling, if that's appropriate. But I do think that this opportunity to have a better life is so important, right? Life is short.
Life is very short, man.
We know it all too well. And the older you and I get, the more frequently we're reminded of that. And we're all too often hearing really sad stories. And so to give people that opportunity to start over, to find happiness that they didn't have, to look forward to going home, to look forward to their lives, I feel really blessed that I'm able to play some small role in that.
And that's such a unique approach that you take to your field of law, because many attorneys in your space would just jump to litigating the divorce, but you really try to make people's lives better. Especially, like you said, you push your clients to all do therapy. And that's such an interesting take. I've never heard something like that. So
yeah, thanks for highlighting that, Jules. I don't understand. Look, when I was young and I understood this need you had to present to the public as you're strong and you're tough and you're willing to try the case. And we're all those things, but they shouldn't be projected. I don't need to flex my muscles to prove my legal strength. None of us have that kind of ego. We're very good at what we do. My partner just finished a trial. I have no doubt that he's going to get a great result. We wished it didn't have to happen. It cost the client a lot of money unnecessarily, but under the circumstances, there was no reasonable alternative. It's disturbing to me. It's unfortunate, the public perception of lawyers in general and matrimonial lawyers in particular. And I think, unfortunately, part of that is we've earned that. And I think we've earned that for lots of different reasons. Again, I will deny to the day I die that there's as many dirty lawyers as many people, including at least 2 of the 3 of us on this podcast, seem to think there are. Or perhaps
I am way more cynical than you when it comes to your space, especially.
I know. And my belief, and Tom and I, for those who don't know, have coached with the same coaching outfit, Atticus, for many years together. I believe a lot of it is they're overwhelmed. I think that they don't know how. I never wanted to. When I was a young lawyer, I felt I had to be a lawyer first. And I thought that meant business came second. And there's a powerful story I share. I don't know if I should share it on this podcast.
Share it. Go ahead. I know what you're going to do. Share it.
Over 20 years ago, Tom came here to meet me for lunch, and he stopped into my office to see it. And he said to me, James, what's the first thing you think of when you get into the office? And I said, Tom, are you kidding me? I think of a million things. I can't begin to tell you. My mind is racing with all the work that I have to do, all the phone calls I have to return. And Tom grabbed the pad of paper. We were sitting across the desk that was in front of me, and he turned it around and he made a big dollar sign on it. And he sent it back to me. And I understand that better now than ever. And I've loved and respected Tom for decades. But what he was telling me there is not that money comes first, but that if you're not watching the money, you're not going to be able to run your firm the right way. And ultimately, you're going to hurt your clients. And that's what I believe is happening, particularly in my space. I think these lawyers are overwhelmed. They want to be the hero. They want to save the day. They're often not getting paid for the work they do. I can't tell you in my career how many trials I've done where at some point my adversary shares that he or she is owed $100,000 from the client. And I say, what are you doing? And they said, well, I felt bad for the person. And I said, no, try to tell them gently. But I said, had everyone said no, this case would have settled 2 years ago. And at some point, the money becomes unreal, regardless of the client's net worth. The money, it grows so quickly that they don't understand it. And for certainly our middle-class clients, it's devastating, those fees. And so what I learned and what I really learned through coaching is the business has to be a priority. If you're not running your firm efficiently, then you're overwhelmed. And I think that creates a lot of litigation. One of the stories I tell, you'd call up a lawyer Monday morning and they'd start yelling at you. And this, happened many times. And I would have to say, hey, Joe, it's me. What are you doing? And they would then apologize and explain to me, I worked all weekend. I'm getting crushed. On Long Island, at least, where civil servants can make over $200,000 a year, you have a lot of lawyers making a lot less than that. And they often are carrying heavy debt. They probably many of them believe that their place in life should afford them a lifestyle that they can't afford. And so they're highly leveraged. Look, we represent a lot of lawyers. And if they're a partner in a big Manhattan law firm, sure, they're making seven figures. But if they're out here, if they're on Long Island and they don't have their own firm, and even some of those with their own firm, they're really not making giant numbers. And there's a good chance that they're very leveraged and they have very little in terms of net worth. And I think that creates a lot of the ugly litigation we see. Some of it, I'll admit, maybe because they're churning. I think a lot of it is they just can't get out of their own way. And that's heartbreaking, right? I mean, that's just part of the tragedy, part of the really another unfortunate aspect of the area that I practice in.
I would agree with that. And I'll tell you a real quick funny story. So I was at a networking event and I had an attorney wanted to refer me a contract litigation case. And it was going to be hourly billed, right? It's the only hourly work we'll do is if it's a defense-sided case, doing a contract litigation only. And, the person was asking me for a referral fee. And I called up James and I said, James, listen, you've never paid out referral fees. I tell people when I refer you, I don't want referral fees. It's blood money. It's a friend of mine. It's a family member. I don't want fee participation on a matrimonial case. But I said, James, so he talked me through how to approach it with her. And I said, listen, I really can't do this. I said, my hourly rate is this. The profit structure is this. I can't go below that on these types of cases. And her answer was, that's your hourly rate? That's insane. And I was like, sit down. Let's have a conversation. I calculated out what her hourly rate was. And she was at like $100 an hour because she's doing paralegal work and legal secretary work. And then I said, do me a favor. This is too long for me to engage in this conversation. You need to call up Atticus and just sign up.
That's good.
And sure enough, she did. I still haven't heard the outcome of her Atticus training, but yeah, what you're talking about is that dollar sign I put at the top of the sheet is what good is James Joseph going to be if he's worried about making payroll on a Monday?
So true.
What good is Tom Tona going to be if I don't run it like a business that we're up to 23 people in-house. I have a team of 15 people overseas. We're hiring more people overseas.
Amazing.
We're hiring another 4 positions in-house right now because I'm running it like a business, right? So when I was an associate, the partner used to come by, hey, we got payroll on Friday. What are you settling? Like, I don't settle cases that are not supposed to settle because I got to make payroll. That is not best interest of the client.
Right.
But similarly, like you're saying, how insane is it? Somebody who's blue collar that makes, pick a number, $100,000 a year. maybe they're a blue collar employee, even $125 a year, going to get a $50,000 bill from a matrimonial attorney is kind of crazy.
Crazy. And really, I always say, if they're litigating, it takes four people. It's the two-part, it's the husband and wife, the spouses, and their lawyers. And you need all four to be reasonable and rational. But that's what should be happening, because $50,000, $20,000 is a ton of money for most people, and it shouldn't have to happen. Sometimes a divorce is going to cost a lot more than that because there's some serious issues with children, with demands on jobs, with the assets are very complex. But so much that occurs is wasteful and unnecessary and really, really damaging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree, especially New York. New York's law is pretty clear about who gets what. And so you brought up your core values. What are your core values?
So integrity is our first one. And we have this posted in our break room so that we see it every day. And I try to incorporate these core values into all the decisions we make in the firm. So in our definition of integrity, and I'm actually going to pull it up as we speak so I can give you the full thing, we started off, do the right thing. Being straight, honest, forthright, transparent, acting ethically and with integrity in all we do. Counseling clients to do what is right for their case, themselves, and their children, rather than simply telling them what they want to hear. And I'll tell you on that first one, over the years, I've hired attorneys that have worked in other places. And every now and then, one of them will say how refreshing it is to sit in an initial consultation and hear the client being told the truth. Because the truth in my field, again, we're dividing the assets. So you're walking away generally with a lot less than what you had before you met me. And if you have children, you're going to be seeing them. Your time with them is going to be less. You may see them more because you may change your schedule as a result. But these are hard conversations to have. And it's always been my concern that in too many offices, lawyers, out of fear, out of ego, out of perhaps some other areas that I'll leave for you two to fill in, aren't willing to do that. And we tell them that we're very straight right up front. Do I lose some business over it? Probably. Do I care? No. My reputation used to be the most difficult clients, send them to James. And other divorce lawyers would send me the toughest cases. And when I was younger, I took those for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted the trial experience. And if I had the case from the beginning, there was a good chance I'd resolve it because I would prepare it properly. So I would know where it should end up. And the adversary would realize they're not going to do better at trial. They're probably going to do a lot worse. So the trials I would get would be cases that other lawyers had dropped, or just the client was firing the lawyer because the client was so unreasonable. So I had a lot of patience. And over time, I realized it was just too difficult. And those people, sadly, were not in a place that they were ready to grow, that they were ready to move on. And that's something for the therapist to work out, but not for us to work out. And so those cases, I'm not interested anymore. So our first one is integrity. Next is professionalism. And that's really part of what we've been talking about, not screaming and yelling, even when, I can tell you inside my office, I can use some colorful language when I'm involved in cases with my team, venting on what I'm dealing with. But when we're in court, when we're on the phone with an adversary, we avoid that at all costs. And it's not easy. There are certainly times where you do want to yell and scream, but we never find that to be effective. We never find, unless you have a really weak adversary, the odds are your bullying is not going to get them to cower and agree to give you a deal that you wouldn't otherwise get. More likely, they're just going to get pissed off, dig in, and it's going to take more time. So that's a big one for us. Work-life balance, recognizing that if my team isn't well rested, they're not going to perform at their best. Teamwork is another big one for us. Everyone plays a role here. And then lastly, growth. I care a lot, like you, Tom. I was complimenting, I think we were on air earlier, the wonderful, how great you've been with Jules and getting her at this young age into coaching and growing, and how much she was listening to one of your podcasts. But I think she was saying that I think you said in the last year, and I think she said in the last 6 months, she's grown and just become a different person. And that's so great to hear. And so I want everyone on my team to want to grow personally and professionally. I think it's healthier, and I think it's just better for everybody.
Right. It's so funny because your core values are very similar. But you and I, we talk about this stuff all the time over lunch, but I know you listen to Gary Vee, right? So in number one, when you were stating your first core value, all I kept thinking was his concept of kind candor, right?
Love it.
And it's amazing to me. I've seen the same thing. Attorneys and paralegals that are scared to tell the truth to the client. And I'm like, hey, listen, kind candor is one of my core values.
Mm-hmm.
We're all kind, but we're telling them the direct truth, right? No one benefits from, and I do think a big part of it's fear. I know for me, and people might say, Tom, I'm the most abrasive person. I can be the most abrasive person at times, right? But I struggled with kind candor. But Gary Vee's concept and explanation of it in his book, 12 and a half, really set me free. Now, I'm like, hey, here's our standard. If I'm talking to an employee, here's our standard. You're falling below our standard. We need to bring it up in 30 days, or maybe we're not the right fit. Maybe you're not the right fit, or we're not the right fit for you. And now when I have those conversations, I don't feel any fear whatsoever, right? Talking to the client, same thing. And I love that I've been in the room when you've had these conversations. A very good friend of mine, one of my best friends, goes through the divorce situation. And man, was he rocked. And man, was it easy for him to go dark side, right? The dark side was calling him. And I would talk him to Friday nights, Saturday nights. I was talking to him all the time. And I'd be like, look, what did James say? James told me this. Just do what James says. Trust me when I tell you. Go for the therapy. And you know, one of the things, by the way, that I learned about therapy in general, that you should always tell the clients that are giving you a little resistance to it is, if you don't go for therapy, you're going to marry the same type of person the second time or the third time around.
That's great. I'd say
100%. A therapist told me that, right? He said, if you don't figure out why you chose this way, you're going to choose that way again. And man, if that's not incentive for people to get into therapy, I don't know what is.
That is powerful. I love that. That is really great, Tom.
So shift gears for a second. So Atticus, right? You got me into Atticus. And now you know me, I talk about coaching. Like, I can't understand people who don't invest in it. I think this year my coaching bill is going to exceed 6 figures with all the coaching I'm doing, right? Would I ever spend that kind of money if the ROI wasn't there?
Of course.
Right? So I owe it to you, though, because probably about 13 years ago or 15 years ago, you and I were sitting at your favorite steakhouse and you were all excited. You're like, look, I got an hour and a half. And you kept looking at your watch because time management's a huge thing for you. Not so much for me because I'm just not that guy. But you were like, you got to go down to Atticus. Atticus is doing this weekend thing. Just trust me. And I did. And it changed my life. It changed my life. So thank you for that. I know that you're continuing to change lives because now you're a coach for Atticus, right?
I do. I take I take no more than 1 or 2 clients at a time. It's really something I do out of passion, out of this desire to have an impact. And with Atticus, of course, what they figured out is they could have a tremendous impact by impacting lawyers because each of us has an opportunity to have such an impact. So yeah, Atticus, life-changing for me too, Tom. And I'm so grateful that you followed in those steps. And then, and since then you've led me in many ways and I've learned so much from you. It's just been a great journey. I started with them 21 years ago.
That's amazing in itself, right?
Yeah.
Why did you get started with Atticus? Talk about that because you touched on it prior. Talk about why you got started with the coaching for any of the lawyers that are listening that are on the fence about it.
I'm interested to hear how you found Atticus.
Sure. So I can respond to both of those. So I had started my own practice. I had been out of law school for 5 years. And I had been working with a firm that ultimately folded, which was not surprising because they were great guys, they were great lawyers, but it was terribly run. And we would work 12 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week. And the senior associate who had been out of law school a year longer than me, I said to him, how do you bill? I've never billed before. And he said, look, if you can capture 4 hours a day, that's great. So
oh my God.
We would bill 4 hours. And then the senior partner, was a wonderful guy who sadly passed away way too soon. But Steve would then, when he would bill the clients, most of them were his friends, and he would feel bad for them, and he'd cut the bill. And so our 4 hours would turn into 2 or 3 hours. So needless to say, they had no money. And I was pretty young at the time, in my 30s. And I remember thinking, I'll be a better business person than these guys. This is ridiculous. I can do this on my own. And I was making $45,000, 5 years out of law school, and I had gone to the partner and I wanted a raise. He said, what do you think? What should I be paying you? I said, I think double. And he said, I agree. He said, but I have no money. So it made it really easy to make the decision. And what we did in that firm, unfortunately, we had so much work, we couldn't get ahead of it. And so we were often adjourning things. We were always getting more time. It was so difficult to get motion papers done. And so I felt like a good part of my day was getting adjournments, buying time, talking to irate clients who understandably were irate, quite frankly. And when I started my practice, I said, look, I have a bachelor's degree in business. Of course, I'll be a better business person. And I'll never forget where I was. Maybe it was, I could do the math, let's just say a year or two after I'd started. I had a really big case against a Manhattan divorce lawyer, guy in his 60s, one of the big names at the time. And I can tell you where I was in my car when he said to me, I was on my cell phone, and he said, James, I got to tell you, you're a bright young lawyer. You have a really, really great future ahead of you. But if I can give you one bit of advice, you need to return phone calls quicker. And Tom, I broke out in a cold sweat. For me, that was everything. That's why I started my practice. And it was the wake-up call where I realized I'm going down the same path. I'm becoming like every other lawyer, and I thought I'd be different. Fortunately, at that same time, Jules, I had read the New York State Bar Association had, I think it was a newspaper at the time, a newsletter that went out once a month. And there was an article by an Atticus coach. And I read it. I said, wow, this makes a lot of sense. Coincidentally, Atticus was doing a 2 or 3 day workshop in Manhattan a few months later. And so I went to the workshop, and one of the younger guys there, and there were two things Mark Powers, the founder of Atticus, said that really hit home. One was we took 5 minutes, and he said, I'd like everybody to write down what you like to do in your free time. My mind went blank. I didn't have free time. And I looked around the room, no pencils were moving. So that was one. And then later in the session, he said, okay, what I'd like you all to do, unless you're on trial, stop working weekends. And I thought, this is crazy. That's exciting, but that can't work. So I pulled Mark aside, because I always say I'm modest, but I'm fairly confident in myself. And so I said, Mark, you have to understand. I said, my goal is to be the best divorce lawyer on Long Island. That's what drives me. I want to know that my clients are not going to get better representation elsewhere. And you're telling me to work less. It doesn't make sense to me. He looked at me and he smiled, and Mark said to me, he said, James, if you wrote another motion, would that make you a better lawyer? I said, huh. He said, what if you had time to think? What if you had time to strategize? And it made sense. And at that stage of my life, I didn't have a lot of time to think. I didn't have time to strategize. And that has sent me down a journey that has just been so incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, Jules and I talk about it a lot. And I got to give Atticus again and Steve Riley specifically. They did a couple of modules in the DYM, the Dominate Your Market, about the science of the brain. And the need for that slack, that culture that you've created is just, you're doing it differently. You've never succumbed to any of the pressure from the outside space. You've always done it. You've had the vision. And I think that's really why you're dominating your market. Understanding that taking that time creates the space for you to innovate growth, right? We're in a field where nobody really innovates. The lawyers are not known for innovation, but you're doing it. You're doing it in a different way, right? So I think that is very innovative.
And I think the way that you both practice and that you both encourage your attorneys to practice also sets you apart from that stigma that does surround lawyers. And, it's how you will break that stigma in the future, because like James has mentioned, most people, when they think of attorneys, think of like these overworked, like similar to how you were when you were younger, James.
And me, I was the same.
Where phone calls don't get returned and cases go untouched for a while. And the way that you guys practice and encourage your attorneys to practice now really is breaking that routine that people know lawyers to have.
But I also think attributing it to the coaching, right? It forces a reprioritization. That question that you told me about many years ago, which was, would you be a better lawyer if you wrote another motion, right? It really stuck with me. I have repeated that in my head where I'm like, I will not touch a file again. And if I have to, it means I need to hire somebody else. Either I need more staff or different staff, because why is it on my desk with 40-something people that work for me right now, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that the coaching has forced that reprioritization. How many years are you and Elsa married?
Now I'm going to get in trouble.
Sorry.
We're married. It'll be 28 this December.
Wow.
Yes.
Congratulations. That's
Congratulations.
awesome. And you have two beautiful daughters, right?
Yes, thank you.
And they're both, one of us graduated college, or they
So
both
both now
graduated?
have graduated. One's living in Brooklyn, and one is pursuing her dream to be in film editing. And I'm very happy for her, but I'm very sad that she's in LA. So
okay.
we had her home for the holiday weekend, but my heart pains.
Yeah, I'm sure. The coaching that you've done and that you do continues to enrich lives. I think that that's also what makes you special, is the give back that you're doing on a regular basis to the field, right? Like you said something interesting before for attorneys that are listening to this, because I was we're very much in the same place. I had the epiphany that I didn't want to hire young anymore. I wanted to hire experience. So I started hiring 8 years to 25 and 30 years, right? I have one guy that's in the office. He's been doing it 50 years. He's not an attorney. He's a settlement adjuster, and he's the best at what he does. But what that allowed me to do is I built the base, like you were saying, and then I created space for the younger attorneys, and I created positions for them, because I was listening to horror stories on interviews where I was like, there's a different way to do this, right? And so that's kind of what you're doing, where now you have the bandwidth because you have attorneys to train the other attorneys, right? So I think coaching, it's changed my life. It's changed your life. Now you're continuing to change lives with that. I'm hoping to get into this space. So you spoke about gratitude earlier, and I know that where that comes from, but tell me the role of gratitude in your life, and what does that look like on a daily basis?
I'll tell you, that brings to mind a story from quite a long time ago. I've always been a car guy, and when I was a young lawyer, I went out and got a Mercedes, and it was the first fancy car I had. I'm almost embarrassed to admit it, but it was meaningful to me. And I ran into a neighbor friend, and he said to me, he was so excited. He's like, "Good for you, James. You deserve it." And it turned my stomach. And to this day, I think deserve it. I don't think we deserve anything. I don't understand that. So part of that has just always been my makeup. I've never felt entitled to anything. I've worked hard, but I certainly understood that just because, a lot of people work hard, the guy in the supermarket may be holding down 3 jobs. The guy stocking the shelves working crazy hours, and barely having time to sleep because of the way the different jobs are staggered. And so, A, I've never felt entitled to anything. And B, and certainly on this anniversary date, it's highlighted in my head. The older we get, you talk about wisdom as we move into our late 50s, I certainly realize that each day is a gift. That I think you and I have spoken a lot about. One of the lessons I got with Atticus, we used to meet with these great monks who are really wise. And like I'm sure many people say, and perhaps many people in the clergy say, each day is a gift, not a given. And I work hard to remember that. That's the reason for the license plates, because I'm human and I can get caught up in the nonsense in the moment and then remember that, hey, we're here and we woke up. The story that I like to tell from the monastery is the first time we went for about 10 years, a group, myself and about 10 other divorce lawyers from around the country. And the first day, I had been a little apprehensive and I really didn't know what I could possibly learn from this monk. And then the second day, we sat in a semicircle around Brother Curtis. And with a twinkle in his eyes, he said to us, "Good morning." And he said, "Something amazing happened this morning." And I was so excited. I moved to the edge of my seat because I couldn't wait to hear the impact that us divorce lawyers had on those monks. So I guess maybe I had a little hubris too. And he said, "We woke up." And he said, "You could see your clock and your legs worked and you were able to get out of bed." And that has stuck with me forever, and such a beautiful, powerful way to live your life. I aspire to that. I'm not where the monk is yet, but that is my goal.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And it's funny the way you approached it too, because we're so, listen, I forget who was telling a story about lawyers in general, right? You go to college, you go to law school, and everybody says, "God, you're so smart, right? You're so deserving," or whatever. And I'm very much like you, like, one of the guys that I'm connected to on LinkedIn, who I just had on the podcast, is coming out tomorrow, uses the term an embarrassment of riches, right? Meaning we live such blessed lives
Yes.
that It's easy to get wrapped up in the wrong stuff. And again, I think that's where the coaching is great, because a coach will throw up in your face, hey, James, look how far you've come, man. You're sitting here complaining to me right now, but you got 6 attorneys working for you. You take off 175 days a year. All your attorneys leave at 6 o'clock. They have great lives. You're enriching people's lives. And so that's the value of having the outside voice of somebody you trust, somebody that's accomplished, or a monk saying to you, which I always found fascinating. I haven't done it. I know they typically do for the mat attorneys at Atticus, but you think about it. Like, my wife has a very good friend whose husband passed away in the middle of the night. They kissed goodnight and he didn't wake up.
Crazy.
Right? Like, so yeah, man, at 55, now shit's going wrong for everybody.
Right.
And Jules, you won't know it yet because you're 25 and you think you're invincible, but we were once 25 too.
Yeah.
And it is a blessing to open your eyes, have great people where, like, I look forward to going to the office when I go in. I'm like, I love my team. I demand excellence, but I love my team. Mm-hmm. Right? So I do a gratitude exercise that I learned from Steve Riley, right? Like, in my calendar, write 3 things I'm grateful for that morning before I start my day. Get my head straight, right? So I love that that's a big part of your outlook. And for you, especially, given everything that you've gone through, and today's your 16th anniversary of your transformational procedure, right? In a lot of ways, that was like a gift, right? For you.
100%. 100%. It had such a positive, and it sounds cliche, and I certainly wouldn't have chosen that path if that was an option,
right? But
really a positive impact on my life. The gratitude is so important, and since you mentioned that lesson from Steve, I'll share. So there's an app I use, which I'll make a plug for. I wish I had a financial interest in it. I don't. But the 5-minute journal. And I do it every morning. It's the simplest thing. You quickly dictate what 3 things are you grateful for. And then there's a couple of other things you can fill out. But I think that's just such a great way to start your day. And it's so much healthier than we wake up, oh, I got this and that and all this crap to deal with. And we forget we woke up. And if you're listening to this podcast, that means you probably have a $1,000 iPhone and you have a roof over your head and you're well fed. And for those things, it's easy to forget. And it's so valuable to remember how grateful we should be.
For sure. I mean, listen, there are kids that go to bed hungry. There are people that don't have access to clean water. And so we're going to complain.
Right.
So it really is an embarrassment of riches. I love that term. Yeah. I'm stealing it from Ryan. Shout out to Ryan. I think that, again, what makes you so unique, and that's really why I wanted to have you on, is that anybody that's listening to this, whether they're a client or an attorney that doesn't practice in your space, to refer cases to you, is to say, you are so unique. And I mean that. Like, I'm not just blowing smoke. Like, I know people in your space. They are miserable. If you look up miserable, there's a picture of most divorce attorneys in the dictionary. And the fact that you always have a smile on your face, you're always willing to help, lend a helping hand to anybody, is pretty magical, right? Like, and I think that is huge. So if you were talking to a potential client, 3 things you would want them to know before we hang up the podcast. And then the next thing I'm going to ask for is attorneys that might be listening to you, needle movers that, you would want them to know about. So give it the 2 individuals, because I think that I'm going to send this to a lot of potential clients for you that I would refer to you. So what are the 3 things you would want a potential client to know about your firm and how they do what they do?
So we talked a lot about, in advice, the need for them to be in therapy. In addition to that, we push our clients hard to keep their eye on the goals. So we talk to them about goals early on, and then we work hard to make sure they're not distracted from those goals. So the fact that your spouse returned the child and the laundry was dirty, that may be something worth raising, because if the kid is 5, we don't want to deal with that for the next 10 years. But it's also a distraction, and we have to balance how far we're going to push it. And if the truth is, if the husband has never done laundry and he's always been a slob, you may never change that. And that sucks, and it's not fair, but that's life. And do we want to spend $50,000 litigating that issue, because it's going to turn into a lot, right? Because that's going to could send us down the road of a custody battle that we might not otherwise need. So the second thing, keeping their eye on their goal and not getting distracted by all the noise, by the nonsense, as real as it may be, it may not be worth fighting over. So that's really critical, we tell our clients. And then about us, look, we're a team. Everybody here cares deeply about our clients. I tell them, don't follow my advice blindly, but listen to what we have to say, ask questions, but you have to put your trust in somebody. And that's hard and that's scary. I admit sheepishly that it's only in the last 5 years that I've engaged a financial planner for myself. And that's crazy, right? We know the value of coaching. And why did I think I could be a financial planner when I'm a full-time divorce attorney? So that holds for us. All too often, people are often surrounded by caring, loving friends and family who may tell them about their divorce and how it went. But every situation is unique. Every situation is different. And what applied in your friend's divorce may not be what applied in your divorce. So we're happy to talk it through. I remember years ago representing a client, and at some point he was very upset he had to pay his wife maintenance. She had never worked. He had a good job. Their kids, I think, were in their early teens at the time, but she had an affair. And so for him, understandably, emotionally, he was quite angry. And I completely get that. But at some point I said to him, Frank, I've told you 10 times why you have to pay her maintenance. That's how the law, that's how it works. And he laughed. He said, you probably told me 100 times, but I need to hear it again. And I said, I'll tell you it again, but we're spending thousands of dollars talking about something that's not going to change. And so, and I know that's hard, and I'm very keyed into, it's easy to sit on this side of the desk and give advice. But if you don't trust your divorce lawyer, you may be with the wrong divorce lawyer, because pretty quickly, I think we earn our clients' trust. And I think that's critical for the clients. It's critical for us to be able to do a great job, and it's critical for the clients to be able to move forward in the best way possible. So those are the top 3 things I would say to clients.
I would tell you that you hit on something I think is important. I don't think I have ever referred anybody over to you that hasn't come back and said, thank you. My life was better because you gave me James. And also the building of the trust. I think because you're so transparent and you're so emotionally intelligent, all the lawyers in your firm and the paralegals and your team are so emotionally intelligent. You've done such a masterful job of weaving that into the fabric, that emotional intelligence, that not one person has not called me back after the initial consult and said, I feel so much better. Thank you. So you've done a masterful job of that trust building right out of the gate. And that's why as an attorney, I feel comfortable. I don't like referring people out if I don't know that it's going to make me look good, right? The last thing I want is somebody to be like, who did you refer to me to? This guy showed up 15 minutes late, and that's never going to happen with you. It's kind of set it and forget it. I can refer anybody to you comfortably. So for the attorneys out there that are listening to this, whether they're new attorneys or whether they're practicing attorneys for decades, what are the 3 needle movers you would cite, especially if they're struggling, right? Because just because somebody's been practicing for decades doesn't mean that they're not struggling or that they're happy. What are the 3 needle movers you would cite as far as the seat you're sitting in today? What are the 3 biggest things that got you there? And what would your advice be if anybody's struggling?
I love the saying, you don't know what you don't know, right? There's this whole category of information out there that we don't even know exists. And for us in the beginning, that was coaching. I didn't know that there was coaches for lawyers.
Me either.
Right? And that could help you run a business. I thought, we're a small business. At the time, maybe I had 1 employee, 2 employees. Why would I need coaching? So I think that's critical. And I think that's something that we forget or we simply just don't know. And so once you recognize that, it opens up a world of possibilities. I think I was listening to a podcast on the way in this morning we're talking a lot about Atticus, but it was the Atticus podcast. And they were talking to a speaker and author, and he was talking about the importance of who you surround yourself with. And as I listened to really flattered and humbled by all the nice things you're saying, Tom, and I appreciate that. And as you're saying it, I think that's why we have the relationship we do, because that's you. And I think that's why we enjoy spending time together and we continue to learn from each other. So I think who you surround yourself with is really critical. I think that if you surround yourself with people and lawyers that complain, that are bitter, that are miserable, that are overworked, that's who you're going to become if you're not already. So find the right circle, find the people that are living the life you want to live, and surround yourself with them and spend some time with them. Those are probably the two most important things that come to mind immediately. After that, I have on my desk, I've shown this to you, I think, more than once, and I actually hide it from clients, though clients really don't come in my office anymore. And I'll explain why in a minute. But I really put this on my desk, this printout, for the business side of it, because I learned that, and I'll, for those who will watch this, so this is a Winston Churchill quote: "Perfection is the enemy of progress." And as a practicing lawyer, I strove for perfection. And of course, we know that's impossible and really unhealthy. And while that desire may have helped my clients, it led to a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of unbilled time, because I knew I couldn't bill the clients for all the extra effort I was putting in, striving for something that wasn't possible. But in running my practice, and really it applies to practicing law as well, we had a great associate years ago who would give back any letter to the paralegals 10 times and was driving the paralegals crazy. It was enough. And that stood in the way of this attorney's growth and ability to move things forward. This certainly applies to running the business, and that's why I have it on my desk. I think that lawyers can be really hard on themselves, and in a way that they think is healthy, but really interferes with their ability to practice at their best. So that's the other bit of advice I would give.
Yeah, man. We use the saying, done is better than perfect, right? Because there is no such thing.
Yes.
But so just kind of move it towards conclusion real quick. But another thing about you that I'm realizing is how self-actualized you are, right? Because you, and I think Steve Riley said this in one of his podcasts, which is you will only rise to the level of your issue resolution, right? Like, I know you've done work on yourself, because none of the stuff you're saying would be leaving your lips if you hadn't. Beneath perfectionism is insecurity, right? Am I good enough?
Yes.
And that could come from childhood. A lot of it comes from childhood. And we've all had that. You have the employee who's so paralyzed by perfection that they're moving at 50% of the volume of somebody who's got a more like, hey, look, I'm doing good enough. I'm doing great work. Great is not perfect. Right? And there is no such thing. So I think that that's an astute observation. So I think that the introspection that you're showing, again, that's why people should not hesitate to call you, right? There's a lot of matrimonial attorneys that I'm connected to on LinkedIn. And I'm like, because they'll write to me and say, well, who do you recommend for coaching? And I'm like, if you're in Matt's, coach with James. Coach with James. He's the best at what he does. He's not saying it. I'm saying it. I'm the outsider for 28 years. I would know who's the best in my space. He is the best. So I'm going to tie it up with that and say, you are the best, my man. And I'm flattered by the compliments you paid me, but I consider your friendship and our relationship a real blessing in my life. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on.
Thank you, Tom. This has been an honor. I truly appreciate it.
So tell us where everybody can find you, your social media. Where do you want to direct people in terms of finding you, your website, that type of stuff?
Thank you, Tom. So our website, josephLawGroupPC.com is our website. And then you can see, if you're in need of a divorce lawyer, don't hesitate to look up our reviews. The reviews, again, we're really proud of. Quite a few reviews are left for us on Google, you'll find some on LinkedIn, some on Avo, some on Facebook. I think these days most people are leaving them on LinkedIn. So josephLawPC.com is the website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody, whether you're a potential client, if you're a potential client, just talk to James or his attorneys. I mean, they'll put you at ease. In 1 hour, you'll walk out with a sighing of relief. To anybody that's listening, if you're an attorney in New York and you're referring out cases, don't do it for the referral fees. Do it because it's the right thing. James's firm is the right firm. Mm-hmm. James, thank you, my man. Yeah. And if there's nothing else, we're good, man.
Thank you, Jules.
Thank you.